Call the meeting to order. It's a meeting of February 16th. We'll note that all commissioners are present, and the first item of business is the order of business. Are there any changes to the order of business? Hearing none, would there be a motion then to approve the order of business?
So moved.
Second.
We have the motion and the second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Motion carries. Next item then is the consent agenda. Are there any items on the consent agenda you wish to discuss? If there's nothing on the consent agenda you wish to discuss, is there a motion to approve it?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have the motion, the second. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Jackson?
Aye.
Mrs. Stuckert?
Aye.
Mr. Frenzel?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries. We're going to move to tab 4. And the first item we have there is an ordinance number 1377, and this would be the consideration to approve the second and final reading of that ordinance. And it has to deal with the volunteer fire department pension plan. And Mr. Colling, is there anything you want to say about this proposed ordinance?
Mr. President, Commissioners, just by way of overview, the ordinance makes some changes to the vesting schedule for the volunteer fire department pension plan. There have been no changes to the proposed ordinance since passage of first reading.
Thank you, Mr. Colling. Are there any comments or questions by commissioners?
I'll move for second and final reading of ordinance 1377.
Second.
We have the motion, the second. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. Mr. Jackson?
Aye.
Mrs. Stuckert?
Aye.
Mr. Frenzel?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries. We'll go to item B. And this is a land transaction. And Mr. Kessel will make the introduction.
Thank you, President Johnson. Before you is a purchase of lots in Country Oaks Estate, second edition. Normally, if it's a full price offer, this doesn't appear before the commission, but we do have a policy statement that says anything that is less than 20 acres must come before the commission. This proposed sale is for 11.5 acres of land. You'll notice on the provided materials that it says 14.8 on the map. That includes the streets and all. But the purchase price for the land alone is 11.5 acres. It is a full price offer. It is has been discussed by Engineer Soren, Assessor Zent, and I, and we are recommending that the commission approve this land purchase.
Thank you, Mr. Kessel. You've heard his introduction. Are there any comments or questions? Mr. Kessel, is there 20 acres available there?
There are actually 20 acres available. The interest that is had by the developer, Mr. Sullivan, at this point doesn't include the full 20, but the streets will be built out that you see. That was one of the requirements that we made. So they will connect rather than having partial streets constructed.
In that parcel of land, what is the total acreage?
Inside the box is 14.8.
Right, I mean in the parcel that we have available for sale.
Oh, I don't have that number off the top of my head. That's something I'd have to get for you. All of that land along the eastern boundary there, lots 1 through 50,
That's all still available?
yes, that is all
Okay.
still available.
Are there any other comments or questions?
I just have one question from Mr. Sullivan. Just what are your intentions of building on this property? I know, but I would like the public to know.
Mr. Sullivan, you'd have to come to the podium, to the mic there, and answer the question.
Yes, the intentions are to fulfill the infrastructure requirements and then to sell to other builders along with us and build on the property.
And what type of housing are you planning on building there?
We've typically built around the 160 to 190 range. It's about 1,230 square feet, the bi-levels, where we finish, we finish the 1,230 upstairs, and then we do usually one bedroom in the basement. And then there's a bathroom stubbed in the basement with the rest of the living quarters framed out.
Thank you.
Where are you building currently?
In Williston, 2 years ago, we started a very similar development, about 12 acres, where we put in the water, sewer, streets. Up there, we had 28 lots to develop. We've got, actually, there's 2 lots left, but we kept those really because we're building those ourselves. We need to keep our guys busy to get going in the spring. We did bring in other builders. There was other builders that built out there from the town itself. So the goal really is to get the development built out as efficiently, as quickly as you can.
When do you hope to start?
Well, we'd like to start this spring. We'd like to get going. I've got a pretty good idea from Sean, the engineering requirements. We'd meet again, then we'd get an engineer, hire an engineer, and then we'd like to start this spring.
Okay. All right, well, I understand you've lived here before in Dickinson.
Yep, I was here from 1981 to 85 and worked with the Parks and Rec Department. Doug Jager was the director at the time. And I also have been the director in Williston. And in between doing it, where I became involved in the construction end was with Thoraldson out of Fargo. We did all this site work, mainly in the southern states in the mid-90s.
Okay. Well, welcome back to Dickinson.
Well, thank you.
Yep. Okay. Anything else? Joe?
Mr. Mayor, I will need to exempt myself from the voting as the representation is from an associate broker by office.
Okay, so Mr. Frenzel will be abstaining.
I'd make a motion to approve the purchase agreement.
Okay,
Second.
we have the motion and the second. Is there any discussion? Mr. Kessel, did you give the amount when you reported? I can't remember.
The purchase price?
Right.
Certainly. The purchase price is $54,463. There'll be a 10% earnest money down of $5,446.30.
Okay. All right, thank you. We have the motion, the second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, then we'll vote. Mr. Jackson?
Aye.
Ms. Stuckert?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, and Mr. Frenzel abstains, so the motion carries. We'll move to item C, which, this has to, item C and D have to do with the hydraulic improvement on cell 3 for the wastewater area. We've been talking about this at several meetings, and I was thinking, Mr. Colling, that perhaps you could explain both items C and D at one time, and I realize we have to act on them separately, but if you would, please.
Sure, my pleasure. Item C and D, as he stated, have to do with the cell 3 hydraulic improvements. As you know, we are receiving a loan from the state revolving fund for the improvements. The loan is in about approximate amount of $835,000. Items C and D are required by the state in order to access that money. There's a resolution that needs to be passed by the governing body authorizing the city to issue bonds to receive the loan. And then item D is the loan agreement that provides the terms under which the city will receive the funds. We were assisted by bond attorneys out of Bismarck, Cook, Wagner, and Wiki in drafting these documents, and city staff would recommend approval of both of them.
Mr. Rapp, is there anything you want to say about this project? I know you've talked about it several times in the past.
No, President Johnson. Attorney Colling has been working on these and stuff, doing it just the paperwork that needs to be done to secure the funding.
Okay. All right. Well, then I'll ask commissioners if you have any comments or questions on either item C or D that you'd like to address to either Mr. Rapp or Mr. Colling. All right. If there are no comments or questions, item C is...
I have one,
Okay,
Mr.
Mr.
President.
Jackson.
Mr. Rapp, maybe you can help me with this. I keep thinking about potential for stimulus money that's coming. Will the application or use of the SRF inhibit what could happen in the way of stimulus if this project might be eligible for stimulus money that we don't know about yet? Am I
Mr.
making
Jackson,
sense with my
actually-
question?
Yes, I can. Actually, on Thursday last week, we're notified that this has not been funding through ERA. The state met the obligation as far as the dollar amount that they've got. The state elected to basically fund this out of just standard SRF money.
Okay.
It stays at 1%. It does not affect any future funding that we could submit through them. And then also, if there is future stimulus money, we would still have access to that money.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments? Okay, item C then is the resolution authorizing issuance of a sewer revenue bond. Would there be a motion regarding this resolution?
Mr. President,
Mr. Steiner?
move to approve resolution number 02, 2010.
Okay, we have the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
We have the motion and the second. Any discussion now? Okay, hearing none, we'll vote. Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Frenzel?
Aye.
Mrs. Stuckert?
Aye.
Mr. Jackson?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. The motion carries. Now, related to this, then, is the improvement loan agreement. And I guess this is actually a loan application. And Mr. Colling has already introduced this item. Do you have any comments or questions regarding this agreement? Not? Is there a motion regarding this agreement?
I
I'll
make-
move.
Mr. Jackson.
Second.
Mr. Jackson moved the approval. Mrs. Stuckert seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, then we'll vote. Mr. Jackson?
Aye.
Mrs. Stuckert?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Frenzel?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries. It's 5:30. We have a 5:30 timetable item, and Mrs. Zent will present that. It has to do with the tornado abatements.
Thank you, President Johnson, Commissioners. You have before you 4 property owners that have filed property tax abatement due to the tornado damage to their properties. Again, a 50% reduction was given on the valuation of these properties for the remaining 6 months of the 2009 taxable year. You have the abatement forms and also a spreadsheet showing the valuations before and after the tornado damage. For your information, I have to date, which if these are approved, which would include these figures, there has been a total of $295,000 in valuation that has been abated from the tornado damage, and that is approximately 47 properties that have been affected. So we, I think we're getting pretty much to the end of the people that, you know, are made aware or filing. There are still a few out there that we haven't heard from, but they do have up to 2 years to file that abatement. So I think the majority of them have been processed, though.
Your office has reviewed the properties, and you're recommending that we grant these abatements?
Correct, yes.
Okay. All right, well, you've heard the recommendation, you've got the information in your packet. Do you have any comments or questions? All right, would there be a motion regarding this item?
I make a motion to approve the abatements.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
We have the motion and the second. Any discussion? Hearing none, then we'll vote. Mrs. Stuckert?
Aye.
Mr. Frenzel?
Aye.
Mr. Jackson?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner? Chair votes aye. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Zen. Okay, well now, we'll move to tab 5, which is public safety, and we'll hear from Chief Sivak, Fire Department.
President Johnson, Commissioners, I'd like to start with our January report. In the month of January, we responded to 14 incidents. 2 of those general alarms. The good news is that neither one was a high dollar loss. One was a report of a classroom on fire at Trinity High School, and it was a light ballast that had malfunctioned and filled the classroom with smoke, activating their alarm system. When they found it, at first, it appeared that the entire room was on fire, and that's how the report came to us, so our standard response for that is a general alarm. The other is related to the early morning explosion. We responded to a fire alarm at MDU, and the way the information was coming into dispatch that morning, the explosion happened, the alarm came into the MDU building, and initially the thought was that the explosion was the MDU building. So our standard response to that, again, was a general alarm, full department response. And as you all know, of course, it wasn't the MDU building that was involved. Our alert crew calls for January were quite low, with 1. Usually we see an average of about 5 per month in that category. And we had a strong start to the year in fire prevention and public education with 156 total inspections accomplished. That concludes my report for the month of January. If there aren't any questions, I'd like to just touch on some highlights for the 2009 annual report that you have before you. Okay. In 2009, we responded to 218 incidents, and I'd like to refer you to the incident graph that you'll find on page 4 of your report. That breaks our incidents down by type. Anything you'll see in the 100 series is an actual fire. Of our 218 incidents, we had 37 actual fires. 16, or basically 17% of our total calls was that type of incident. And it goes on to explain the other categories of incidents, a 300 series rescue or EMS, 400 series hazard conditions, so on and so forth. We were down from the 271 total incidents in 2008. The report following the graph simply identifies the incident types a bit more for you by category and by number per category. Following that report, you see a graph of monthly responses, and you'll notice on that graph, which is right before page 7, that January was our peak month with 28 incidents for the month of January. And part of that is, of course, the tornado event that Dickinson experienced. Following that graph on page 7, I've included a log of storm-related events for the evening and early morning hours following the tornado. The reason I did that is because under incident type, in the beginning reports that you have in this report, the tornado is entered as just one simple category, severe weather storm event. And it truly doesn't do justice to the activities of that evening. So I've tried to kind of outline that for you, or give you the experience by including this storm-related log.
Chief Sivak,
Yes, sir.
I think both Commissioner Jackson and I heard you refer to the month of July as January. and it-
Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, we might not have heard properly too, but
No.
just so we're clear, if someone's listening and not really,
I appreciate the correction. It is the
If-
month of July. It is absolutely the month of
Yeah.
July. And I am so appreciative of the fact that you're both paying attention.
Yeah,
Thank you
I'm
for
sure you're
that.
not used to that.
I didn't imply that.
Ah,
Thank you, and that is correct. The month of July was our peak month, and that is the event of the tornado, the month of July. If I could ask you to turn to page 10, you'll see a graph that shows our fire dollar loss history. And even though our number of incidents was down in 2009 compared to 2008, our dollar loss was still up there. We had high dollar loss fires in 2009. Still well below our high of 2007, which is when we experienced the Elks Club and the East End Auto fires. Following that graph, you have a report of the fires again by dollar loss based on the property use, simply to help you define a bit more exactly where these fires are happening. Page 12, our fire protection cost per capita shows that we're still quite reasonable for a community the size of Dickinson. 2009 fire protection per capita came out to about $22.40. Now, we're using the census figures, the last official census figures, which show Dickinson at a little over 16,000. If Dickinson has grown, as we all assume it has, and believe it has, that of course would drive that per capita dollar figure back down below $20, probably. On page 13, you'll find a response time graph, and this is an area that we're watching very closely. Now, this graph, as represented to you in this report, is for all of our alarms. It groups all of our alarms together, whether they were actual fires or whether they were officer going to check an alarm sounding and no suspicious fire activity involved. One of the things we're looking at is a national standard, NFPA 1720, is a standard that covers the delivery of service to the public for a volunteer fire department. The standard suggests that for a community the size of Dickinson, we should be able to have 15 firefighters on scene of a structure fire within 9 minutes of receiving the alarm 90% of the time. Now, when you can keep in mind that our volunteer firefighters are responding from their homes and from their places of employment through traffic at posted speed limits, because that's what we tell them. We do not give them any permission to do anything other than posted speed limits. Meeting this national standard becomes quite a challenge. Now, meeting a national standard isn't necessarily a fit for a community. It's a recommended standard. It's a baseline. It's something for us to go by. What we want to do through 2010, what's important to us and for the community of Dickinson, is we want to fine-tune our data. We want to see how long it's actually taking us for that first unit, that first engine, with 3 or 4 firefighters on board, to get to the scene. We want to track that time and see how traffic and the growth of the community is impacting that. Because the arrival of that first unit is truly when the situation changes, hopefully for the better. When we're on scene with that first unit and with those first firefighters, and when we begin impacting the situation. So for Dickinson at this point in time, we want to fine-tune our data to determine that figure. Where are we truly at with that? We can amass the number of people. We know we can do that historically looking back at our data. Whether we're doing it within 9 minutes, 90% of the time, I believe at this point is an issue further down the road. Our members on page 14 continue to invest in their betterment through training. We had a record year for total training hours compiled at 2,412 total hours when you look at everybody's investment. And what the graph has done for us is it helps us to tweak where we need the training. Now, you'll see under the officers' training, there's an extremely low category. That's specific officers' training. Anytime we have a training, of course, the officers are involved, and the officers are part of that training and receiving some training. Specific officer training is a goal that we recognize that we have to increase. We have to strengthen that measurably in 2010. Part of the training that we had in 2009 included specialized training to help our department be at the level of response required by the state for our role in their regional response plan. On page 15, you'll see our equipment replacement projection graph, and it was helped immensely in 2009 by the addition of our new pumper. We replaced a unit that was 36 years old. It was timed so that when the lease purchase on Unit 502, which is a rescue equipment truck, ended, the city of Dickinson was able to look at purchasing another truck, and now we have a lease purchase on that piece of equipment for 5 years. If at the end of that 5-year period, we look at being able to replace another unit, that next engine, that next apparatus that's ready to be replaced will be approximately 35 years old.
Which one are you looking at replacing next?
Unit 506,
506?
506.
Okay.
We've kind of bunched up on equipment here, in Unit 507 being almost as old as 506. And if we're looking at approximately a 10-year replacement for 507, it's a small pumper, it's a 250 gallon per minute pumper. My take on it, at this point in time, I would have to say I don't believe that truck will last that long. One of the things we did in recognizing that, when we purchased the new truck, we purchased a pumper 250 gallon per minute capacity more than the truck it replaced. So if something would happen and we lose 507 before it can be replaced, we didn't lose anything in pumping capacity, which is important in the insurance aspect when they come and look at us and rate the community.
The Unit 506, when you replace that, would you be replacing it with a unit that's very similar to 506 right now, recognizing that it's 30 years old, but, or,
If I could replace it right now, I would replace it with a twin to the one you just bought us,
okay,
a
and
1,500 gallon per minute pumper,
that, what did that cost us again?
$328,000. Is that a check you're signing?
No, I'm reminding myself to get some Excedrin, so, you know.
Okay,
328.
328.
Do you have any cheap equipment?
We have quality equipment,
Uh,
and we are very proud of the commitment the commission has made to that. We're gaining on our equipment problem, as you can see, and we'll keep working with administration on creative ways to help us keep gaining in that respect, staying current.
What-
Following
just,
that graph-
Chief Seebuck, along that
Yes.
same lines, and the 1981 mini pumper, what do you think would be the price of its replacement?
Today, that type of,
Well, whatever piece of equipment you would recommend to take its place.
to replace an equipment, a truck similar to that one today, it'd be about 150, 170,000, somewhere in there.
Okay.
As the community grows, however, whether that would be the proper piece of equipment to buy again would be questionable, especially, you know, if we're looking 5 years down the road or
Right.
more.
Yeah, yeah, this was appropriate 30
It was-
years ago.
It was appropriate at the time.
Yeah.
Right.
So the replacement for it may cost more or less than the 170, probably
Oh,
more.
absolutely. Yes, absolutely. If Dickinson would continue to grow, and of course, we all hope it does, in 5 and 8 years, 10 years out, and nothing has changed, the mini pumper concept more than likely isn't going to be what we need. It's going to be a full Class A pumper, like we just purchased. On page 16, just for your review, we show a history of the insurance rebates that we receive annually based on the insurance premiums generated in the community. You see they do fluctuate, and I can't give you a good explanation as to why on that, just based on what comes into the Insurance Tax Commissioner's office. It goes back to 1976, however. That money generally goes back to the general fund. On page 17, we've been fortunate since 2002 to have brought in $611,508 in grant monies from various sources that we've used to purchase equipment and purchase vehicles and do improvements to the training site with. We continue pursuing grants and continue to remain successful with quite a few of them. That's a very good thing. It's quite a bit of money that we were able to bring in. Following that, I'd ask you to please take the time to read the fire prevention report submitted by Fire Prevention Specialist Deb Barrows and take a look at the graph on page 18. I'd like to stress that when it comes to firefighting, when it actually comes to firefighting, this is where it starts. It doesn't start when we receive the call, and it doesn't start when the truck rolls out of the fire hall. It starts right here in fire prevention activities. And one of the things we're tracking in fire prevention and in our inspection program activities, and you see the inspection graph on page 19, is somewhat of a disturbing trend. We remain fairly consistent in the number of inspections we conduct yearly. We remain fairly consistent, 47 to 49% of our time spent on the inspection process. What we're seeing happen, however, is it's taking us 18 to 20 months to get back to where we started at Mr. and Mrs. Smith's business, if you will, when ideally it should be taking us 12 months. And we recognize this situation developing a few years ago already, and we started to address it by prioritizing our inspections, by recognizing the target hazards in the community, and recognizing areas and occupancies that require more than a once-a-year visit. And even with prioritizing inspections, what we're finding is, quite honestly, we're still losing ground. The community is growing away from us, is what's happening. And we'll be watching that closely and keeping administration abreast of that. That concludes touching on the highlights of the report. If you have any questions, I would do my best to answer them.
I have one for Chief Seebuck.
Mrs. Stuckert.
You're working with less full-time staff than 25 years ago, and we've increased our residency, and of course, our growth has been phenomenal for the last 3-4 years. What's your recommendation? Do you need more? I see you're more concerned about the inspectors than also, or follow-up inspections rather than putting on more full-time staff, or how would you fix that problem?
If you want to address strictly the code enforcement public education aspect of what we're looking at here, and this is something that we have already touched on this past budget season with administration, I could put another field inspector to work immediately. If we're looking at a longer term, a broader problem, which includes the response times and the growing community and the problems that our volunteers are having in getting through the town to us, we may be looking at a different situation, a situation where, well, of course, the substation comes into play. Additional staff comes into play, possibly 3 firefighters on a 24-on, 24-off rotating shift. Any given day, you're only working with one of those individuals. But then you have an employee there at night to bolster the volunteer response also. So it depends, Mrs. Stuckert, on what we see the future as. And of course, and most critically, on what the city can financially really do.
Well, I know we're spreading out farther and farther with our buildings, so we're just wondering, we need to try and fix it sooner than later?
My job is to bring it before you.
Other questions or comments?
Mr. President,
Mr. Steiner?
Chief Seelock, I'd like to take it back to page 14. And I want to ask you if this is a concern that we should have, and that if you have this as a concern, the number that, you know, with the energy industry that we have in Dickinson and the increase that we see coming, in light of recent events with the explosion out in the West Industrial Park, do we have sufficient education in the hazmat area there?
We do. We currently do. Our department is certified to the hazardous materials operations level, which is what we can effectively support. So if you're asking, are the fire department membership trained adequately, at this point in time, they are, thanks to the training that we received in 2009.
My question would be, are you, then you're okay with the amount of training that are shown there, 29, and,
Yes, yes, that brought us to the hazardous materials operations level. Now, what supports that, and what we sometimes lose in our data, is under specialized training, throughout the course of the year, we'll work in hazardous materials incidents, hazardous materials response, aspects of that to stay current. So in any training scenario, we may have an aspect or an element of that, using the monitors, using some of the equipment. So it's a part that works into the whole. It's there to some degree in other trainings also.
do we still have that hazardous training trailer that we
We do.
received? Okay.
That's tagged for regional response. We actually did use that locally during the tornado event. We used equipment from that. One of the shelters, which is a decon shelter, decontamination shelter, was used as a shelter for the Red Cross.
And what unit are we using to pull that with?
That was a unit that was bought with Homeland Security money also. It's a
Okay, so that has been
report of-
updated, because I know there was a concern
Right.
that we didn't have the proper equipment to,
Yes, initially, when the state put the trailers out in the region, it was thought that you would be able to pull it with one of your fire trucks until we actually put the trailer on the back of one of the fire trucks and almost tore the back of the fire truck off. So then we weren't the only ones, and the state realized that tow vehicles were a necessity, and the next grant round that came out, we were able to address that. So, and those are state assets that we have the privilege of using on a daily basis, actually.
I'm looking at your roster of firemen also, and you have a lot of people with a lot of years of experience, and you got some new ones coming in, so. that's good to
Constantly
see.
recruiting. We can't stop.
But you got some guys with 20 to 30 years of experience on there.
We do, and, you know, there again, a concern of ours, even in the volunteer world, we're experiencing what city departments are experiencing with full-time staff, in that we have good people, people that have been with us 2 or 3 years, that come in and tell us they can't commit to us anymore because their energy or oil field-related jobs don't give them the time. And it's not that, I don't mean in saying that the employer doesn't support us. It's the nature of the job. The nature of the job takes them out of town, or the nature of the job, they're on 3-4 days in a row and, you know, then off, and the last thing they need to do is come back to town and do work another job, basically. So even in the volunteer world, we're experiencing aspects of that.
If we ever have to go from a volunteer force to a paid force, we're looking at a minimum of what, 100,000 per
Well,
fireman?
if you'd look at the full department and staffing the full department as per recommended, you know, crews per truck and so on and so forth, we'd have a budget that would rival the police departments. Now, that's not how it would happen for Dickinson, I don't believe. It would be a gradual thing. It would be possibly funding and staffing a crew, and then in building and growing from there. I do believe that a volunteer fire department is a viable aspect for the community for many years to come. Amazing commitment from these individuals, an amazing commitment from their families, and from the employers that support that effort. As you can see by some of the things we've outlined in the report, some of the concerns that we have in response times and in the inspection world and so on, we will probably be knocking on the door addressing staffing. The staffing, our full-time staff plays a critical and crucial role in the delivery of training to our volunteers also. And you can see a direct correlation with if inspections drop off. I know for a fact, if inspections drop off, you can look and you can see training hours increased. There's a direct correlation there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chief Sivak, so if we have someone watching that is interested in becoming a volunteer fire person, and you take both male and female applicants.
We do.
How do they go about applying?
They can contact the fire department, 456-7625, come down and visit with us, or they can access our website online, dickinsonfire.com. There is a downloadable application as part of that. If they're interested at all, we're more than willing to take take them around, sit them down, answer their questions, explain the time commitment to them, so on.
It's a great way to support your community, and
It is in fact, and these aren't my words, but I'm great at taking somebody else's idea, so that's okay. The American Fire Service is in fact the longest running expression of volunteerism in the United States. 8 out of 10 firefighters nationally are volunteer, not career. 2/3 of all fire departments nationally are volunteer. We need their help.
thank you.
Thank you.
Chief,
I guess you're,
one more question, back to the response time thing, and I apologize if you said this and I didn't get it, but is this the first year you've measured that response time?
You know, we've looked at the graph before, in all honesty. This is the first year we've included it. And one of the reasons for that is because of the comments we heard from our members through the course of the year and what we've experienced ourselves in watching our members respond through traffic and getting to us and saying, wow, this may be an issue here. This is starting to become an issue. These guys are having a hard time getting here. That's why we've looked at this graph this year. We've decided to include it, and we know that we want to fine-tune our data to really track how long is it taking to get that first truck there.
Sure. But we really don't have like numbers, like measurements for prior years?
Not the way the data had been inputted, no.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
okay, thank you, Chief. Is there a report from the police department? We have Lieutenant Banyai giving the report this evening.
President Johnson, Commissioners, in your handout, there is the January 2010 traffic report. With that, we had 90 accidents in the month of January. 3 of those were injury. Comparing those numbers to 2009 of January, we're pretty close as far as those numbers are. Considering the weather that we've had this year, I think has been a little more difficult to travel with the snow and ice out there. So the January 2009 and 2010, I think we've done okay so far this year with the weather that we've had. Out of those 16 out of those 90 accidents were hit and run accidents involving one vehicle. 3 reported injury accidents, and 80 of the accidents involved $1,000 or more damage to both vehicles. 33 of the accidents occurred on private property. That would be like parking lots or a school lot, mall parking lot or something is where those accidents would have happened. For school zones, there was a total of 50 school zone contacts in January of 2010. 14 of those contacts involved citations to the driver. 14 also involved warnings to the driver. And 22 of the school zone contacts were parking tickets. On the second and third page of the report, it shows each shift, how they performed individually by shifts. If there's any questions.
Explain that to us. What's the A shift? Is that the day shift or,
There are 4 shifts, A, B, and C, and D shift.
okay,
And with the rotation, with days off, we work 12-hour shifts. So one shift would work 12 hours, the next coming on shift would work another 12 hours. And to have adequate manpower, they're broken up into 4 different shifts. It's not like a morning shift, afternoon shift. It's actually should be like an A squad, B squad, C squad, and D squad.
Other questions or comments?
I just have one more question. I was going to give this to Chief Rummel, but I guess you're going to have to answer it the best you can. I see an influx of Hispanics moving into our area as workers, and some of them just temporarily. Do we have anybody trained in our law enforcement, or even, and Mr. Kessel can answer the other part of it, as city employees, do we have anybody that can speak Spanish?
That's an area that we've talked about in the past. We've looked at trying to bring some training in, but yes, would be an impairment for us. Typically, in the past, we've had people at the college that would come out and interpret for us. That person no longer works there, but that is an area that we need to do some training in, and that can be very intensive. I know there's about a 2-week school, but it's out of state, so it would be costly, but we've been looking at incorporating that into our training.
Okay, I've been working with Mr. Henderson from New England. He's a coach, but he's also a Spanish teacher. He got his degree actually here at DSU. And mostly I started for my own company because we've had walk-ins where I have no clue what they're saying, you know, and to try and assist someone. I just feel that in our community, we should provide that kind of service, whether it's 1 employee or 5 employees or whatever. But he's willing to come in and train, and I'll give the information to you, Mr. Kessel, at $13 an hour, you know, and he said normally a 32-hour, and he'd work around the city employee's status as well as anyone else that wants to hire him, work around whatever hours they need. But I thought that was very reasonable, really. And I know there's that Rosetta Stone course you can take online, but I don't know, you know, the cost and how effective and how long it takes, where he would come in and do 4 to 8 hours at a time, and in 4 days you could be done with 32 hours of credits.
I think it was about 3 or 4 years ago, there was a course for law enforcement that some of the officers went to in Minot. But that deals more with just a single phrase, not really, you know, when we're trying to talk to them, it's really not a very good way to communicate.
Yeah, he said too that with him and his wife both being Spanish teachers, they could talk the language while they're teaching it so we understand better too what, I thought it was terrific of him even to volunteer to do that and work around our schedules. But I see that more and more here.
It would be something we'd be interested in.
And I know the National Guard, they too, he said that in the past they can actually go to Rosetta Stone. Am I saying that right? Rosetta Stone? Free, but to always log in, you know, if you get the software, are you going to really do it? Where if you're in a classroom, you're going to really follow through and get your training and you're done. So, thank you.
Well,
Anything else for Lieutenant Banyai? Okay, thank you.
thank you.
We'll move to tab 6, and this is engineering, so Mr. Soren.
Thanks, President Johnson, Commissioners. The first item I have on here is an engineering service agreement with Cattermosley and Jackson. It's for our 2010 mill and overlay project, which includes 3rd, 4th, and 5th streets from 5th Avenue to 8th Avenue, as well as 6th Street from, or 6th Avenue from 3rd Street to 5th Street. That will complete the area that we have in this part of town that we had tried to get done initially in a couple of years. It's taken us 3 years. Along with this project, just to point out, 1st and 2nd Streets are our urban road projects for this year, which are just on the south side of everything that we've been completing over the 3 years. This agreement with Cattermosley and Jackson is for $36,300, and the estimated project cost is right around $650,000.
Okay. You've heard Mr. Soren's introduction. Are there any comments or questions for him?
I'll make a motion to approve the mill and overlay street project.
We have the motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have the motion and the second. Any discussion?
Mr. President, I'll be abstaining from the vote.
Okay, Mr. Jackson will abstain. Any other comments or questions? Not, we'll vote. Mrs. Stuckert?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Frenzel?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Mr. Jackson abstains, the motion carries. Mr. Soren, you can continue.
The next item is the code enforcement. I really don't have much to report on that, as it's the start of the new year, and we haven't had a lot of activity there. I would like to point out a couple things, dealing with the sale of land tonight, with the development coming in that area. I've got 3 sketch plats on my desk around planning and zoning tomorrow for review, working with 2 other developers on expansion of some subdivisions that have already been started and moving forward. So it's looking like it's going to be busy in this area. Along with that, I would anticipate that they'll be asking for impact funds. So as those things progress, I'll certainly be making you aware of where we're at and how we're going forward.
Actually, I think it would be a good idea if at the next meeting, we could report on that, again, just kind of like review what our current policy is, and then, where we're at in terms of how much of that impact liability that we've taken.
Yeah, we should be able to report, how much we've given out, how much we've received back, and how many projects that have been completed through that process.
I think it'd be just good for us to kind of review the policies that we have there and see if, those policies are still appropriate, and give our commission and our management staff a chance to, make any comments, ask any questions.
Sure.
I was going to bring up the same thing, having to do with impact fees especially, get a status report of where we are. Are we also, do we keep a tally of how many undeveloped lots we have in the city, and what the, as we start bringing in these new subdivision, where that's going to take us? There was a time that I think we thought that was pretty important many years ago, and monitoring that.
We don't have at this point, but we certainly can make a pretty good tally of projects that have impact fees associated with them, how much of them are developed and filled, for that meeting as well, so we can see how the developments are coming with the ones that we've recently implemented the project with.
In a somewhat related matter, could we also get a summary of how many city-owned properties there are remaining, and how they're zoned and whatnot?
Yes.
Anything else?
I don't have anything else.
No, you're planning on being at the next meeting, right? So-
I'm planning to.
All right, good. Okay. Well, now we'll move to the city administrator's report. And you have quite a list for us there, Mr. Kessel.
I'll do my best to get through these. The first item is a small wind turbine ordinance. This was placed on the report this evening for 2 reasons. The first is the city of Bismarck recently undertook examining small wind energy systems and developing an ordinance that they have since adopted. The other reason that it was placed on here is Commissioner Jackson has volunteered to chair the recycling committee that we are putting together, and as we were discussing the recycling committee, the discussion of going green energy came up as well, and so we anticipate that these types of systems will migrate to our community, and we want to be prepared as best we can. In discussions with Engineer Soren, our ordinance does address these energy systems. It does place restrictions on where they can be used, which zoning classes allow them and which ones do not. So we may not have to adopt an ordinance as comprehensive as Bismarck if we feel that ours is adequate. But the planning and zoning, after discussion with Engineer Soren, planning and zoning can take that issue up and make any recommendations that they may have to the commission. The next item then is the Public Transportation Board. This is a board that was created several years ago. Its purpose is to provide information, make recommendations, and investigate transportation issues related to public and private transit operations in the city of Dickinson. That's their stated purpose right from their bylaws. The nature of transportation has changed quite a bit in simply the year that I have been here. Certainly not due to any actions of mine, but more of the board themselves and other people's involved and this commission. The city used to be a direct recipient of 5311 grant dollars. 5311 is simply the federal dollar or federal grant number that they use that's given to the state and then funneled out to all of the operations within the city. We have since gotten out of being a direct recipient of those dollars, and ElderCare has done that themselves. The administration of those grant funds being taken over by ElderCare has released our staff from doing those activities. We still remain intimately involved with public transportation, just in a different way. We've also incorporated the taxi cab into the ElderCare operations, or they have done that themselves. This transition is complete in terms of operations, maybe not in terms of their staffing, but they're providing both services and doing quite well at both of them. The Transportation Board, when I first arrived here in Dickinson, would take up concerns expressed by citizens in the public, and we'd have one or two each meeting. I haven't had a stated concern, well, I had one in probably the last 6 to 8 months. So I believe that is a good indication that things are going very well. ElderCare is doing a nice job of providing this service. Having said that, and with those results, we approached this Transportation Board and said, you know, these are all the things that are going on. Do you still have a role to provide in the city of Dickinson? At that time, they voted to make themselves an advisory board, and since that time, they've met on one occasion. It was to discuss the transit building, the site locations. We went through several different sites, walked them through all those site locations, positives and negatives, and came up with the one that we are currently planning to build the building on. I have since written a letter to all the board members, asked them what their role, what their purpose is in the future, and I've been contacted, not by all, but by the ones who have contacted me have said that things are going well. There doesn't appear to be a role for Transportation Board in the city of Dickinson any longer. So what you have before you is not a request this time, but maybe a request next time based on response to eliminate the Transportation Board as a board, an advisory board as a whole. This is not done by ordinance. This is done by a vote of the commission. It is simply in their bylaws. It states that dissolving the Transportation Board is done by a vote of the City Commission, and that is it. So I'd like to at least have that discussion to see if maybe there is a new role that they can fulfill, but the members themselves are saying they are not identifying that themselves, and wouldn't mind seeing the dissolution of that board. So it's simply a report this evening for you to think about for our next meeting.
Let's ask if any commissioner has any feedback for you right now on that item. So does anybody like to speak to that?
I have a question, maybe a clarification. This board has nothing to do with the regional transportation planning that the DOT sponsors or leads. Am I correct?
That is correct. The state does all of that regional planning. They certainly would be a board that potentially we could go to and ask advice for. But in terms of planning the regional response to transportation, that is done out of the state DOT.
But don't we have a different board that addresses that?
In terms of public transportation, we do not.
I could answer some of those questions too. On that board originally, there was like community action, social services, someone from the college, from the university. It was how we can provide rides is what it was. Everybody would come to the meeting and say, you know, this is how much we can charge. Elder care was the main one on it also. And the taxi service naturally, which is now one and the same. But Chief Rummel and I thought at the time was, okay, now all this is done through elder care, and that was when you came on board too, that there really isn't a purpose for them to meet anymore, because that's all handled by public transit. And that's what it was all about. We would just meet and say, this is our needs, you know, this is how much money we have, and this is what we got to provide rides for the certain individuals and how much we can charge, and that's what it was.
Certainly, if there's a new and expanding role for them, we should consider that, but I believe that Commissioner Dukart is pretty accurate in saying that their current role that they're fulfilling, the need for them to fulfill that role is gone away.
Anybody else? Commissioner
Mr. Mayor,
Frenzel?
I'd kind of like to see them stay in place until we see how this new transit facility is all going to come together. And I think there's a lot of coordination and compensation that's going to have to take place amongst all the entities that are going to participate in this board. And there may be I don't know what that role is necessarily going to be, but rather than dissolve them and then have to go put something back together again to deal with the future issues, at least at this point in time, I'd like to be more in favor of leaving them in place, seeing how it, and then go to them, and if there's nothing, there's nothing. But I think there might be a role for a board in the future of some kind.
Commissioner Frenzel, do you think possibly if something like what you're envisioning were to occur, that maybe it'd be appropriate to put together an ad hoc group to deal with whatever the issue is, and then when the issue is resolved?
That may be.
Really?
I'm just, the wheels are just starting to turn, so I can't, but I'm just thinking, gee, if we dissolve them and then have to put them back together again to deal with this new facility and all the problems that are going to come with that new facility, my problem is I don't think we can assume that DOT is going to have all the answers.
No, I'm sure even the DOT would tell you they don't have all the answers, but you also have an elder care board that would deal with things, and, you know, I'd like to see it come back on the agenda where, you know, it would be an action item, and we could discuss it further, but I guess I don't have a problem with us, you know, that board being disbanded. And if there's an issue that comes up that elder care board can't deal with, or for whatever reason, and we need to put together an ad hoc group, I think we could do that, and we might recruit some or all of these board members back to deal with that issue. But we have quite a few standing committees with the city, and I think there are some that either could be consolidated or, you know, go away.
The members that have contacted me after receiving the letter asking these questions have said that they would be more than happy to serve on a committee in the future related. So I think an ad hoc committee is a nice idea.
So, anyway,
Okay.
other feedback, I mean, but I think you could place it on the agenda for action. And
Thank you. Next item is the transit building update, certainly related to the last. Preliminary sketches have been completed. There's actually some options that we went over again today. In order to accommodate the terrific slope that exists on that land, there's about a 14-foot difference between the southwest corner and the northeast corner. We're looking at moving that from the western edge of that property to the eastern edge. The slope there is about half of what it is on the western side, so it would help us in terms of site grading and things. there's a very finite budget, and so any dollars that can be saved related to site improvements can be spent therefore on additional square footage, either in the bus storage area or in the office space. Right now, they're looking at about a 3,000 square foot office area and about between a 10 and 11,000 square foot public storage, bus storage area. They were refined again today. It's about $100 a square foot for the office area and about $60 a square foot for the bus transit area to construct those two things. So we looked at ways to lower the cost so that we can strike a balance between construction and operations. We were trying hard to put geothermal as a utility because of the operational costs that we'll avoid in the future. I'm not sure if we'll get that done since it is a capital-intensive project, but we are making that effort. So if there's any questions, I'll be happy to address any related to the transit building. If not, the Baker Building, this is a building that was housed, or did house the elder care operations until there was a roof leak. They have moved those operations, of course, to our Public Works building on Broadway. The building right now is, office space is unoccupied. However, the storage space is full. We use that space. There's several different departments. The police department, the Public Works department, all use that space to store materials, Christmas decorations, vehicles, impounded bikes, things of that nature. We'd be hard pressed to find other locations for interior storage. And without the Public Works building being a project, technically, we're very hesitant to divest ourselves from this building. And it is our recommendation that we do not follow up on or follow through, I should say, on the offer, and that we postpone any future sales until a better idea of what's going to happen with the Public Works building, the new Public Works building, is determined.
Mr. Kessel and Mr. Colling, I would assume that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but that as management, you have the prerogative to reject that offer, and the individual making the offer has the prerogative to appeal it to the commission. Is that the way it works?
Yes, Mr. President, that's correct.
You've heard kind of the management's intention here. Does anybody on the commission want to voice opposition to that? Okay.
Well, thank you. The offer, by the way, may have been, once we did some due diligence, it may have been low. So we would have, if we were going to follow through on a sale, we would have countered or gone through a process of determining a better sale price. The next item then is related to the pilot that was requested on that Section 8 housing. We'd like to set up an informational meeting so that this commission can spend a little bit more time on this project. They have some dates that are in mind that the project developer can be present. And I'd like to suggest some of those dates and find out from the commission which works best. The first date is February 22nd, anytime after 3 p.m. If that works for all of us, we can set a time up, and if not, I'll go on to the next date.
Monday.
I would prefer a different date myself. But
The next date then would be February 23rd, anytime before noon.
that works for me.
Okay.
I'm gone that entire week.
Oh.
But this would be a good thing to do, and if it works for everybody else, you probably should go ahead. I would like to be there, but
Are you available by conference call?
probably could be for a while.
Okay. Commissioner Frenzel, does that work for you?
As far as I know, I will be available.
Okay.
Something's happening that week, but depending on what it is, but I should be here.
Okay?
Now, when you say any time before noon, just, how early might that be?
I would hate to interrupt your walking at the community center, so, actually, anytime, if you want to meet at 8 AM, 7 AM, 9 AM, 10 AM, we'll meet at your convenience.
Well, I'd be available anytime from 7 on. I mean,
Okay.
if we meet at 7, you're going to have to bring breakfast or something.
I will volunteer to do that.
But okay, Commissioner Jackson's going to be gone, Commissioner Dukart,
I'm fine.
you're fine, Commissioner Snyder, Commissioner Penn. So 23rd would,
Okay.
looks like that's our best bet.
Can we say 8 AM then? We'll just meet here at City Hall?
We're going to meet here.
Yep.
And how much time do you think should we allow for that on our calendars?
If you have the time available, at least an hour, I think. But, you know, it might go an hour and a half, depending on the types of questions. What I intend to do is, I've been working with Assessor Zen to gather some historical information regarding previous pilot projects that the city of Dickinson has sponsored, maybe even some TIF projects, since they're related. And then we'll, of course, hear from the developers and then hear opinions from you on what your thoughts are regarding
Okay.
these.
And this would be a special meeting, and I'm assuming we're going to film it and then broadcast?
We certainly can.
Okay. I think that would be a good idea myself.
Okay. Okay, thank you. February 23rd at 8 AM here in the Commission chambers.
You'll send out notices on that?
And we will send you out a reminder notice. Yes.
And Commissioner Jackson, maybe you can just let Mr. Kessel know if you can conference in by telephone. I'm assuming we can do that here, but I guess maybe Bill will have to study that a little bit.
Okay. I'll even probably bring birthday cake, because if my memory served, I think it's your birthday, President Johnson, is it not?
Well, it's on the 22nd.
Okay.
I was going to be busy that night.
Well, I'm impressed you can make an 8 AM meeting on the 23rd.
Well, it's not every day, it's not every day you turn 40, so I just,
Moving on to the next one, then? The tax increment financing, there's a interim tax committee that has taken on tax increment financing. And what I mean by that is that at one of their meetings, a member of that committee raised the subject of TIF, as it's commonly called. Since this is preliminary, we're not exactly sure what they'll be reviewing related to the TIF laws in North Dakota. But since this does affect multiple cities, the North Dakota League of Cities is putting together an advisory group, an ad hoc committee, so to speak, to look at TIF findings and whatever recommendations may come out of that committee, how they'd impact cities and maybe even offer some alternative legislation. I've volunteered to be on that committee if so needed, and I'd like to keep this group well informed of what happens. I'm not sure what the end result will be at this point. The next items are two different thank yous that we received, one from Southwest Community Service, their restitution program. They were part of our grant program this year. And then from Colin Blade, who was our officer for a day, if you remember, from our Make-A-Wish of North Dakota. He came in and the police department did a wonderful job of making his day special prior to flying out to Disneyland. So, and then the last item that I have listed is an Oil for America lease. The reason that this lease is here rather than as an execution item is twofold. The first is in talking with the city of Williston, in order to gather some background information on leases and what to expect. They also mentioned that there has been a request by a group or a citizen to bid these types of things out, rather than, and they question whether the city has the authority to issue a lease without bidding these types of things out. The city attorney in Williston believes they do have that authority, but they have requested an attorney general's opinion on the matter. And I think it behooves us to wait to issue any kind of lease until that Attorney General's opinion has been provided. And I did talk this over with Attorney Colling, and you have a copy of his printed comments related to that as well. So unless there's questions, I guess it would be my recommendation that we not execute that lease till that Attorney General opinion is provided anyways. And then the last item that I'd like to just make mention of is, I briefly mentioned it earlier, Commissioner Jackson has volunteered to chair the recycling committee. We've extended the application date if people are interested. My address was printed in the paper not long ago, so I have had some people respond, and we are getting a nice group of individuals. But if there's anybody else out there, they have at least one more week to indicate their interest. So please contact my office. You can do so by phoning at any time during the office hours, and we'll make sure that your name gets put on the list, and we'll make it a selection and announcements soon. So with that concludes my report, unless there's any other questions.
Thank you, Mr. Kessel. Comments or questions for the city administrator?
I just have one question, Mr. Kessel. It isn't any of your reports today, but on our new Public Works building, has the National Guard ever approached us about doing a joint venture with them?
I actually approached the National Guard myself to do a joint venture with them. They told me at the time that that a project in Dickinson, a new facility in Dickinson, is on their radar screen. Unfortunately, it's not in the immediate future. They're looking at a project between 5 and 9 years away. Their dollars, they see it as a high priority, but the limitations that they have budget-wise will not allow a project of that scope to be built for 5 to 9 years. So we did try to partner with them. We did try to partner with several other potential partners, and unfortunately, it doesn't appear to be working out too well. So we're looking at going it alone.
So we will be getting the roof fixed before the new leaks start?
Yes, the roof has been, we did receive, they were generous enough, they did provide us with $20,000 to help fix that roof. We received a Department of Energy grant to also help defray costs related to fixing that roof. So hopefully that'll be done by this spring or summer.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Kessel, as to the oil lease issue, I know that we do have precedent as a city bidding oil leases. I don't know if you're aware of that.
I wasn't aware of that. How back does that?
Well, it's quite a few years, but I know we did bid some mineral leases
Okay.
some years ago.
Well, that's
I don't know if we always did, but I know we have done some.
Okay. That's good information. I can research that a little bit. I'm not sure what your preference is. If the Attorney General comes back and says, no, you don't have to bid, is that still something that this commission is interested in doing?
Personally, yes.
I would think so, too.
And I think there should be some minimum parameters put on that.
I mean, you know, we see the state and the federal government bid leases there, so there's a kind of a blueprint process that could be followed. I mean, ours wouldn't be near as extensive as a state or the federal government, but I'm sure we could learn something there.
Okay. I appreciate the input.
Either way, I mean, the thing to do right now is just to wait, see what the Attorney General says, and then go from there. But you've heard two commissioners already express an opinion, so.
Thank you. I appreciate it. That concludes my report then.
All right. Any other questions or comments for City Administrator? All right. Okay, we'll move to accounts payable. Is there any accounts payable items that you wish to discuss?
I was just going to mention that, and I got this information from Mr. Kessel, Mr. Soren, and Tina. We did spend $49,000 during the month of January alone just for snow removal, so I think the public needs to know that.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Stuckert. Any other Comments on any item here regarding payables? Not, would there be a motion to approve the accounts payable and payroll?
So moved.
Second.
With the motion second, any discussion? Hearing none, will vote. Mr. Frenzel?
Aye.
Mrs. Stuckert?
Aye.
Mr. Jackson?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries. Any issues by city commissioners?
I have one, and I'm not sure where I want to go with this, but as I looked at the offer tonight on the city-owned lots, and, you know, we talk about the Baker Building issue, I find myself wondering about our pricing on the city-owned property. And I know we have a long evolution in this regard, because we've had those lots for a long time. But I found myself wondering, and I talked to Mr. Soren a little bit, I found myself wondering, those lots were partially developed. There is sewer in the ground up there, and, you know, the price was probably fine. But I found myself wondering, are we differentiating developed lots, non-developed lots, or partially developed lots? I don't know that we need to answer that tonight, but maybe it's worth some review. I don't know that we have a lot of city-owned property left, but we do have some. So just a comment for whatever it's worth.
Mr. President,
Mr. Steiner?
if I'm not mistaken, I think you were part of the Real Estate Review Committee within, I'm thinking, the last couple of years.
About 4 years
We
ago.
went through all the property, didn't we?
I think that enough has changed in the last 4 years that it wouldn't hurt at all for some further review to be done, even though we don't have much left.
I think I'm feeling the same thing.
The real estate committee consists of, I think, Mr. Kessel, Mrs. Zent, Mr. Soren, Mr. Frenzel.
I'm not on a regular committee. I served as an advisor, a city commission advisor last time around, but I'm not on the committee.
We don't have a commissioner formally on it now.
No.
Correct. Internally, those are the three people that we gather to look at any kind of review of real estate.
Well, we're fortunate on the commission to have, you know, two commissioners that have real estate backgrounds. You know, we certainly could have one or both of them work with the three of you and just review what we have and review pricing.
Well, and I think Commissioner Frenzel is right. We need to stay in competition with the ones that are owned by individuals too, because it's pretty hard to sell a lot for someone if we're selling ours for 1/3 the cost. I think we need to bring our prices up to today's market too.
Well, I know that was a feeling 4 years ago or 3 years ago when that was done, and I think our prices were adjusted upward. Well, we certainly could direct the committee to meet with a member of the commission again and look at the pricing.
We'd be happy to do that. If there's a volunteer tonight, we can.
Commissioner Frenzel?
Sure.
Of course, any commissioner can look at this.
Sure.
I mean,
We'll contact then and work through a date and time when we can set up.
Okay.
yeah, you know, I suspect we're reasonably close. If we were too far under the market, we would, you know, we would have quite a run on land. And while sales have been steady, I wouldn't say we've been overwhelmed. And part of that probably has to do with our inventory is getting much lower and has probably been pretty well picked over the last 4 or 5 years.
Mr. President, I think our commercial property is still in line, but I know the land that doesn't have specials, the improvements to it are still the ones that are selling cheaper.
I do have one additional item I would like to mention. We do have, in the upcoming election, we do have 2 seats that are going to be up for election, and that's Commissioner Dukart's and Commissioner Frenzel's. So if people are interested in those 2 spots, they will have to get a petition, make application, and move forward. So if they are interested, they can contact, again, my office, talk with Rita Benstock, and she can walk you through exactly what you need to do. But there is a signature requirement, and it is due by April, so.
All right, well, any other city commission items? Not. Is there anyone from the public that would like to address the commission? If so, step to the podium, state your name, and we'll hear your comments. If there's no one from the public that would like to address us, Chair would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. The motion carries. We're adjourned. We'll call the meeting to order. This is a special city commission meeting. It's Tuesday, February 23rd, also known as Sean Kessel's birthday. And so we're calling the meeting to order. We'll note that Commissioners Frenzel, Steiner, Dukart, and Johnson are here in the room, and we have Commissioner Jackson with us by telephone. And with that, we only have one item on our agenda, and that's to hear a presentation on the pilot program, which is payment in lieu of taxes. And Mr. Kessel is going to present a background history on pilots, and then we're going to hear a request by a developer. So, Mr. Kessel, would you like to start?
Thank you, President Johnson. I just have a brief PowerPoint presentation to provide the Commission with some background of what pilots have been done in Dickinson, what pilots are, and a brief description of the request itself. First, I'd like to start with Century Code or state law. There are some things that the City Commission should be aware of. The first thing is that a pilot can be established by the City Commission for any amount of property taxes due, any ad valorem tax. So if the project in the end creates a $30,000 tax bill, you have the right to adjust that tax bill almost in any way you want, up to 20 years. You have to designate a payment for each of those years, but they don't have to be the same. It could be $25,000 for the first 2 years, 20 for the next 3 years, 15 for the next 5. You have authority to adjust those as you see fit, as long as the project is deemed beneficial to the community as a whole. Now, the way that those tax payments, you can also, by the way, abate all of the taxes in any one of those years, so that there is no tax bill at all. If there is a tax bill, then what automatically happens is whatever is collected gets distributed to the taxing entities in the same way that we are collecting taxes now. So in other words, if the school is receiving 50% of the property taxes collected, they would receive 50% of whatever dollar amount is collected. You also have the right to enter into a written agreement with the schools and the other taxing entities, if they choose to participate, to alter that distribution. You can choose to give all the money collected to the schools, you can choose to give it all to the parks, or you can divvy it out in any way that you deem necessary. If this project is judged to compete against existing business owners in our community, there is a publishing requirement that does have to be completed. Would have to be published twice in our local newspaper. So those are some of the highlights from state law that I wanted to make sure that you as a commission were aware of. The next slide then is the request itself. This information comes from Ripley Richards Real Estate, who is working on behalf of the Prairie Hills Townhomes or Metro Plains Development. The request is for a $5,000 payment in lieu of taxes on 44 units that they plan to locate in the city of Dickinson on 3 different sites. This payment would increase at 3% per year for a total of 17 years. Their estimation of the tax abatement would generate approximately $294,000 for this project. Later, you'll see an estimate that runs a little different than that, but Mr. Stenson is in the audience and he'll address that issue. Where are these projects going to be? The current site is north of 15th Street West, and the other are on 2 parcels of land that the city has engaged in a purchase agreement with Metro Plains. There are, in upcoming slides, I'll show you exactly where those sites are and how the layout of the proposed project will occur on each of those sites. When construction could start as early as this spring, but that that project is still being put together, so a definite construction date is not determined yet. Why are they making this request? There are 3 reasons that they've stated. The first is there are extra expenses to correct a grade on one of those sites. The drainage needs some work, and they're expecting that that's going to cost about $100,000 to correct these site issues that they have on the 4th Avenue and 23rd Street site. The second is to add an electric heat pump. The expected expenses are $132,000. That would lower their operating expenses for heat and cooling all of these units. And the third is the development of access roads on 2 of the new sites at $170,000 or $85,000 each. The next slide, the next 3 slides actually are the proposed sites. The first slide is on 15th Street West. They currently have townhomes on that site. As you can see, they would simply add a few additional townhomes on that site as well. The next site is across the street, again on 15th Street West and on Prairie Avenue. And then the third site is on the 4th Avenue and 23rd Street West property, which is north of these 2 sites. So those are the 3 sites. Those are the proposed developments. They're all townhome style developments. There are a majority of 2-bedroom unit apartments and a few 18-unit apartments, or excuse me, a few 3-bedroom unit apartments. I think there's 18 3-bedroom apartments, and the remainder are 2-bedroom apartment or 2-bedroom townhomes. So what does this mean? They're proposing a $5,000 payment in lieu of taxes. What does that mean to the taxing entities involved? The next slide compares what taxes would be received with a pilot and those without a pilot. With a pilot, the estimated assessed value upon completion is $825,000, almost $826,000. This is based upon the units that are currently within our city. And Assessor Zent and I want to thank her for helping me come up with some of these numbers. That number may be low. Assessor Zent did mention that they were looking at this property in particular, so the initial 825 may be low, but that's the number we're going to use today. They're proposing a $5,000 pilot, increasing at 3% a year for 17 years, which means the total taxation we would receive in that 17 years would be $108,800. Without the pilot, if it would be any other property that we do not abate any taxes on, you start with the same assessed value of $825,000. The estimated property tax it would generate in year 1 is around $28,000. So you can see there's about a $23,000 abatement request in year 1. Now, we took some assumptions here, and we tried to make an apples-to-apples comparison. So we again used a 3% valuation increase each year for 17 years to try to determine what taxes would be collected over the course of that time. The estimate is $615,000. So if you subtract the 615 from the 108, you come up with about $500,000 or $500,000 over the 17-year requested pilot years. I have put the formula that was used to determine the property tax rates. It's your true and full divided by 2 to come up with your assessed value, times the 10% commercial tax rate, times our mill rate. Our mill rate is right around 0.34. So that's how we came up with the property taxes that you see in the both of these valuations. On the next slide, there are additional incentives that that have been requested for this development. It is Section 8 housing. It is to replace the 30 units that were destroyed in the tornado. And because it is Section 8 housing, it does open up the opportunity for additional federal and state incentives. These incentives that are listed are all requested. I don't know if they will be received. I don't know if they'll be received in the quantities that have been requested. So I put that forward just as informational purposes. And then the last page that I have on the PowerPoint is kind of a history of what's been done in Dickinson, at least in the recent past. There's been 2 different pilot projects that have been completed in Dickinson. The first is a Park Avenue Villa. This pilot project was initiated in 1998. It was to facilitate the construction of a 38-unit independent living facility located at 242 10th Street West. The pilot that was agreed to created an environment where there was no taxation, no property taxation anyways, for the first 5 years, from 1998 to 2002. From 2003 to 2017, or a period of 15 years, the agreement was they would pay $4,000 a year based on a true and full value of $2.3 million. The value of that pilot then is $56,000, which would be their normal tax payment, an estimate, minus the $4,000 that they paid times 15 years at $780,000. And then they had 5 years of no taxation, which would equate to just under $200,000 for a total pilot value of $976,000, almost $977,000. So a rather lucrative pilot project. The next is on the total other end of the spectrum. This one was done for Letvin Equipment, which is now known as Dakota Farm Equipment. It was initiated in 2003. It was to remodel and add on to their existing structure. The agreed terms were that the pilot would last until 2007 and that they would pay $3,300 a year in taxes. The true and full value was about $250,000 and would generate a tax bill of approximately $5,800 each and every year. So the value of this pilot is $5,800 times 5, or $29,000, times the $3,300 agreed upon taxes times 5, which is $16,500. Subtract the 2, and you come up with a pilot value of around $12,500. So the 2 pilots that were done in recent history in Dickinson, as you can see, are a yin and a yang. They are about as far apart as you can get on the spectrum. So that is kind of a brief overview of your authority in regards to pilot programs. We have done some TIF financing as well, which is similar to pilots. We have 2 examples of that. I didn't include those since they are different, a different nature than a pilot program, but one of those TIF projects is actually one that was agreed to with Metro Plains. Mr. Stinson was involved in that project as well. So that would conclude my remarks unless there's any questions or comments, and I would ask Attorney Coling if there's any further Century Code issues that the City Commission should be aware about. And I would like to point out that all of the various taxing entities were invited to today's meeting, and we do have a representative from the parks and the school districts in the audience. So with that, Attorney Coling.
Thank you, Mr. President, Commissioners. Just one point that I distinguish on here is there are 2 separate programs that are allowed under the Century Code. The mechanics of them are essentially the same, but the first is the tax exemption. That tax exemption allows you to exempt a certain percentage value of the property from taxation. In that case, the assessor still determines the full and true value of the property and the mill rate and all of that, and simply exempts the percentage of value from what, depending on what you determine. The other is the pilot, or the payment in lieu of taxes, and in that case, you will determine a specific dollar amount that the property owner will pay for each specific year. And in that case, there's no valuation of the property for tax purposes. It's simply a set amount that you have agreed to, and that dollar amount remains constant regardless of the value of the property.
So, Mr. Colling, on the first option, the tax exemption, we could exempt any percentage up to 100%?
That's correct. That's correct. And I should note, too, that you can use both of these methods in combination with each other. You can exempt percentage amounts of the property and in later years have set dollar amounts, or make any sort of combination of those two methods that you deem appropriate.
Okay. Are there any questions for Mr. Colling or Mr. Kessel? Okay, well, thank you for your presentation, Mr. Kessel. And then at this time, we'll hear a presentation by Mr. Gary Stenson.
Thank you. Just wanted to comment, I guess, on a few things. We've been, developing affordable housing in Dickinson for approximately 25 years. Some of the earlier projects used tax increment financing. I think the first one that was Villard Terrace, which at that time Elder Care was looking for new kitchen facilities so that they could use to prepare meals that they serve, I think, throughout Stark County through the Meals on Wheels program. And also at that time, the City of Dickinson issued mortgage revenue bonds to help reduce our interest rate and, help make Villard Terrace work. And then a couple of years later, we did Villard Square, which also had a tax increment finance district set up, and we used, the taxes under the tax increment finance plan. The taxes are rebated for a number of years back to the owner, and that is used to repay a separate loan that was taken out. The pilot concept has been used more recently for several reasons. One, it's a lot easier. There's a lot less transaction costs, attorney's fees, and all the other financing fees that go in to set up a tax increment district, or in the case of Villard Terrace, where we had to sell the mortgage revenue bonds that the City of Dickinson issued. So it's a lot simpler, a lot cleaner, and more of the cities in North Dakota have been using that method now instead of the tax increment finance method. With the other assistance the city provided when we acquired what we call the Meadows Apartments in South Dickinson, formerly known as Southie, we acquired 58 of those apartments from Ted Renner, got housing tax credits and things to improve those units. And if you've been by there, I think you'll agree it's a significant improvement. And the city, in that case, provided land for us to build a community center and offices for the management companies, so we could have more on-site people, at that development. And our related entity, Metro Plains Management, is currently managing the other 58 units, but we don't have any ownership in that. But we're working with the owner and trying to make improvements to those properties as well. The Prairie Avenue townhomes that we finished 3 years ago. In that case, we had rural development, a 515 loan, 50-year loan at 1% interest, and they also provided rental assistance, so the residents pay 30% of their income for rent. We also had home funds through Affordable Housing Developers, which is a nonprofit that distributes the home funds for the western half of North Dakota, and it's actually headquartered. Joanne Schaefer is the director of that. It's headquartered here in Dickinson. They are our partner in that property. The 515 program really is not available anymore. The funding has been reduced, and rural development is now pushing what they call the 538 program, which is what we're going to be applying for the new 44-unit development. So under the 538 program, that's a loan guarantee program. We're going to be applying for a $1.6 million loan that will be guaranteed by rural development, and that results in the interest rate being reduced to just under 6%. But so much different than the 1% loan that we had on Prairie Avenue townhomes. We'll also, and that's a competitive process, notice of funds availability for 2010 will be coming out early next month, and we have our application ready and we'll be applying and are hopeful of receiving that financing. We're also working again with affordable housing developers and applying for $300,000 in home funds. That would be the bulk of what they have to administer for the western half of North Dakota. Then the $4,750,000 would be equity that would be from the sale of the housing tax credits. Each state receives a per capita of housing tax credits each year from the Department of Treasury through the Internal Revenue Service. And in this case, it's allocated through the North Dakota Housing Finance Agency. The amount of credits we'll be applying for will basically be between 25% and 30% of their allocation for this year. And we think, and that again is a competitive process, but we think this application will score very well. They give points for parts of the state that are impacted by the energy activity that's going on and creating housing shortages. They also give points for what they call rural areas, which Dickinson qualifies for. And there's, because we'll have a nonprofit co-general partner, there's also a preference for points there. So we think it'll be a very competitive application and that we will be able to obtain those tax credits. The one problem with the tax credits is with the capital markets the way they are, and the buyers of tax credits up until the last couple of years have been primarily financial institutions. And needless to say, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac and Bank of America and AIG and all of those are pretty much out of the market. There's still a few left. U.S. Bank is still active, but probably not a good fit for this. They want bigger deals than this. We're talking with Enterprise, which works in smaller communities and actually was our investor on the Meadows project that we did a few years ago. Meeting with them in Bismarck tomorrow. They're out of Washington, D.C. And we're talking to the Mountain Plains Equity Group, which is an organization that's set up by Montana, North Dakota, and Wyoming to provide or buy tax credits in those three states. So we're hopeful of being able to find a buyer once we're of the tax credits, an investor once we expect to obtain those. But the pricing may cause us problems. What we're getting for tax credits used to be 85 to 95 cents on the dollar. In this market, if you can find a buyer, it's down to 55, 60, 65 cents on the dollar. So that's really causing some difficulty in financing or making use of the tax credits. Part of the stimulus package that Congress passed last year recognized that, and there was a program called the Exchange Program where you could exchange the credits, 2009 credits, to the Treasury for 85 cents on the dollar. We used that program for a project we have going in Jamestown where we're taking two of our existing properties. The first one we did back in '82, an old hospital that we did into housing. We're redoing it now. So that was one way when we couldn't find an investor for those credits. But I point that out just to show you that there's still a lot of uncertainties in this project. We're confident it's a good project. We think we think it'll work, and but it's by no means we're not there yet. And the final piece, I guess that's not on this slide, is that there is that HAP contract, Housing Assistance Payment Contract, that was part of the Riverview Gardens. And HUD and North Dakota Housing Finance Agency and the City of Dickinson expressed interest in keeping that assistance available for people in Dickinson. That contract basically provides about $200,000 a year in payments from HUD, basically to the tenants or to the owners of the property, so that the tenants end up paying 30% of their income for rent. The maximum income for the new townhomes will probably be for a family income of less than $35,000 a year. And the development will be kept affordable for a minimum of 15 years, and that's really the reason for the request for the period of time that we're looking for the pilot, because at the end of between 15 and 17 years, the original investor is going to want to get out of the project. They've gotten their tax credits, so it's the end of the compliance period, and so then the project will most likely be, if there's needed for improvements, which is what we're doing, properties like the Meadows. I guess one other comment I had on Sean's slide is considering the value of the pilot. This presentation really doesn't take into account the time value of money, and so we really value the pilot. If we are paying taxes at the rate of $5,000 a year, that will allow us to increase our first mortgage by about $300,000. So that'll make $300,000 available to cover the cost of the items that Sean covered in his presentation. And that's a much more efficient way to do it than setting up the tax increment district and rebating the taxes. If we can enter into an agreement so we know what our taxes are, we can work with our first mortgage lender to, because we know what the taxes will be, and we'll have extra money for debt service for those first 15 or 17 years. I think that's all I have. Is there any questions, or?
I have a question, Mr. Stenson. Can you talk a little bit more from the tenant's perspective? I think I heard when you were speaking that your estimate is that the maximum income for tenants in this development would be about $35,000 a year?
That's set by the low-income housing tax credit. You have to keep your rent to people making less than 60% of median income for the area.
Okay, and what would be your estimate in terms of what their monthly rent would be for the two-bedroom or three-bedroom apartments?
I think the rents would probably, for a two-bedroom apartment, would probably be in the $550, $600. But with the Section 8, what they would do is we have to do their income verifications each year, determine what their income is, and then they pay 30% of their annual income basically for rent spread over the 12 months. And then if that figure is less than whatever the published rent is, which in this case, say it's $550 or $600, then HUD, through the Section 8 contract, makes up the difference to the owner of the building.
Okay. What would be the impact on the tenant if Dickinson didn't grant your pilot request, or granted you, say, something a lot less than you've requested? What's the impact to the tenant?
I guess a couple of things. One, if we don't get all the financing put together, the project may not get done. But, assuming the project gets done, and if we're able to do it the way we want, we think that we'll be able to do a more energy-efficient heating and cooling system. One of the things we were not able to do when we did Prairie Avenue, there's some things that came out of the budget. We also have the site costs that, it's going to be, expensive to develop two of the sites anyway, that there's some real grade issues, or particularly the one on 23rd. So that's what we're using the money for. So So I guess the other impact on the tenants is the affordable housing that we've developed over the last 30 years. And in North Dakota, we always try to, get the best product that we possibly can using the available resources. And so we think by having more energy efficient heating and cooling systems, having air conditioning, for the units, and in the case when we did the Villards, having the community spaces that were available and working with elder care to provide senior meals, that those are benefits that were made available by the local assistance that we were provided in those projects. So we see similar benefits here.
So here's the way I'm interpreting your answer. Let's assume that the project goes regardless of whether we grant the pilot. Whether we grant the pilot or not doesn't affect what the low-income tenant pays, but it may impact the quality of the structure that they're living in.
Exactly. Yes.
So, okay.
Mr. President, I have a question for Mr. Stinson. Also on the heating and cooling, I think that's one of the major things that should be considered, because then they don't have to go and ask for heat assistance from Community Action or Social Services. Another question, that's okay?
Mm-hmm. Yep, I agree.
When and if we do set a limit for the pilot program, does that keep the rental incomes, keep them from rising? Would it be a set income over a period of years? Or, I know our rent incomes have gone up in the past 5 years because of shortage naturally, so when you're looking at this 550 to 600, that's pretty substantial for those people.
Yeah, except most likely everybody will be receiving Section 8. We know the 30 units of Section 8 that were lost with Riverview Gardens. There's some other Section 8, and in fact, a project we have in Devil's Lake where there's excess Section 8 that we're planning on transferring 15 of those units to Dickinson, and then there's some others from that we don't have any interest in, but the North Dakota Housing Finance Agency says is available. So we think that there will be a total of 44 apartments that will be eligible for the Section 8 program. So the end result is that the residents will pay 30% of their income for rent, and as the rents change, as operating costs go up, their rent won't change unless their income has gone up.
And I think from one of our meetings that we had, Mr. Kessel, North Dakota Housing was looking at upping their part of support too for the assistance that they give the low-income people too. Because the rents have, that, and I think Commissioner Frenzel, he has some tenants. Right now, I think their limit is $380. Isn't that about it? Somewhere in that range. And then the renter pays the balance.
I believe,
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to mention, during our tornado, FEMA did come in and do a market study of rents to determine what type of assistance people receiving FEMA assistance should receive. And they did reevaluate their original values and did increase that because they were dated. And when they came in and looked at the new rental rates, they did increase that rate of assistance to applicants. Now, how that relates to this project, I can't make that inference. But
There are really two Section 8 programs. This Section 8 program is called project-based, so the Section 8 assistance is tied to the apartment like it was at Riverview Gardens. There's also it's called the existing Section 8 program, where you can get a voucher from the Stark County Housing Authority, and you can use that voucher for any landlord that will accept it. And the effect is pretty much the same, although some of the rates on the maximum that they will allow for rent under the voucher program, has some different rules and could impact what the tenant pays. But that should not be the case here.
Okay, thank you.
Is there another question here? The question I have then, I want to be clear. When you say a tenant could pay $550 to $600 a month, is that their total out-of-pocket cost, or is that kind of the gross number, and then they can receive assistance from the government on paying that amount?
Yeah, say it's $600 a month, the tenant comes in, we verify their income, and we determine that 30% of their income says that they should pay, $450 a month. So they pay the $450 each month. We send a voucher to HUD each month electronically, and then HUD issues the difference between the $450 and the $600. So we would get a check from HUD for $150, and we would get the check from the tenant for $450.
We have, do you worry about the federal government at all with their big deficit? Do you think someday they might just not fund this program, and what happens then to?
That's a concern on the, on the housing. I mean, the federal government has been providing housing assistance for low-income and moderate-income people since, the 30s. So there's concern. We think that, actually, if you look at the housing subsidy programs, the biggest one is the interest deduction on home mortgages, which really affects more the middle class and upper class. So that has a bigger impact on the budget. So we think if there's some reallocation of federal resources, that there may be, an effort to reduce the amount of mortgage interest. I mean, there's been talk about that for years. It's not popular with a lot of voters, obviously, and, I don't think it'll ever be eliminated, but putting a cap on it as to how much interest people can deduct on a home, for example. So I think this program the Section 8 program, I think is pretty secure, but, you never know these days with, what's going to happen.
Okay, any other comments, questions? Mr.
I have a
Frenzel?
question. I think Mr. Jan will be able to answer my question, though, so I don't have a question now.
Oh, you don't, okay. Mr. Kessel, Mr. Colling, any comments, questions from you guys?
I would just like to mention that throughout this process, Mr. Stenson has been very easy to work with, and obviously a priority for us is housing and replacing our units. So we appreciate him coming to the table to offer to do that, and Mr. Tooze has been involved since the beginning as well.
Okay. Mr. Sullivan representing the school district, and Mr. Kramer representing the Park and Recreation District. Do you have any comments or any questions that you would like to ask? If so, you can just step to the podium and we'll hear your questions or comments. No? Okay. No comments to make one way or the other on this request? Okay. Mr. Kessel?
We are not asking for the commission to make a decision this evening, or actually this morning. We are simply trying to provide you with information to help you make a decision down the future. So it doesn't require a vote this evening.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Frenzel?
I have a question, and I believe Mrs. Zent could answer it. I hope you can answer it. How much money was generated in taxes by the old project, Riverview Gardens? How much money was the city receiving from Riverview Gardens, which this is supposed to replace?
I would have to look that information up, Commissioner Frenzel. I don't know that off the top of my head.
Okay. Are there any other questions that can't be answered? I know that one can be answered. She just needs a few minutes to look it up, so.
Fortunately, we don't have to make I heard that we don't have to make a
No.
decision right now, so I don't need that answer at this very moment, so.
kind of a question I have, or concern is, when we do things like this, there's always unintended consequences as a result. And generally, those unintended consequences can come in the form of, once we've done this, then someone else comes in and says, well, you set a precedent, therefore, you should grant my request also. Can anyone here kind of think of any unintended consequences that would come from granting this request or granting something close to what they've requested? I mean, we've had a lot of development interest in Dickinson. I mean, in the past month, I think I've had at least 2 developers, potential developers in my office talking to me about projects, and at least one of them right away brought up something similar to this. And I mean, I have some worries, some concerns. Mr. Frenzel?
I believe that it will become more difficult to say no to people in the future if this whole thing is granted. That's not saying it shouldn't be, I'm just saying that's an issue we're going to have, and I think over the next couple of years, with the conditions we've got in Dickinson, we're going to see more and more developers come in with projects in mind. So I share your concern about the future somewhat, because I believe that we're always going to hear, yeah, but you did for so-and-so. And now the examples that were used were really from another era. They're 12 years ago. And that was a whole different circumstance than we've got today. So, but the project developer doesn't necessarily look at that. He's looking for as good a deal as he can get, and I don't blame him. But
I have another question, Mr. President. Jan, with the actual tax exemption that is in place, what would the benefit be on that? I know it's on commercial, it's different than it is on residential. So I know they can still apply for that even if we give them, not saying they can get, it could be granted, but say if we gave the pilot program, they could still apply for the tax exemption, right?
Correct. Like Attorney Colling had said, they can be used in conjunction with the tax exemption.
Okay, so if they didn't get the pilot program, what is the tax exemption amount that they would be benefiting from?
That would be something that, again,
Value.
right, the percentage of value that would be used each year then. Is that correct? I believe, Matt?
I think what Mrs. Stuckart is asking, she's really asking, we passed a resolution a few years ago that outlined our policy on tax exemptions, and I think she's really asking, what's the current policy?
Okay, the exemption policy that we do have in place we have a new and expanding business exemption.
Right.
And if that's what you're referring to, and then that is, there are criteria to be met for if it's a non-primary or a primary business sector. The non-primary would be for 2 years, and the primary would be for 5 years, and then you're taking, you pay on the land, and you're taking 50% of the valuation. Up to, on a non-primary, it's up to $2 million project, and primary, it's a $5 million project. So there's a formula that we use where you pay on the land, and then you take 50% of the value is exempt, and then you pay on the remainder of that valuation for either that 5 or 2 years.
Is that same as true for like remodels and renovations?
The commercial, there's a commercial and residential remodel exemption. Those are a 2-year exemption, and they're based on the percentage. You put in 20% over and above the market value, and then those would qualify.
You may have another option available to you. The commission just approved this year, 2009, a builder's exemption. That builder's exemption allowed up to 5 homes per builder a 2-year tax abatement. This project may qualify for that tax exemption as well.
And that is what I'm trying to weigh, you know, how much are they going to get there versus, it could be a deciding factor for all of us, too.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I'd like to know what the project developers are actually going to apply for. I mean, if we give them an exemption or the pilot program, are they going to turn around and still come in with the, some of the other exemptions that they've got available to them? You know, we need to look at the total package that the city of Dickinson is granting to these people, not just a single project as we're looking at today, if some of the others are available to them.
And that's, you know, one of the big pictures here, as well as we want this development. I mean, we do have a shortage of housing and definitely income-based.
Yeah, we're not planning to apply for any of the exemptions. And I think the nice thing about the pilot program is that it's really a contract. You can negotiate the terms. So, I mean, part of the pilot could be that, that we would not apply for any of the exemptions, which we don't plan for anyway. So
Okay.
everybody knows up front exactly what the cost is going to be and what the benefit.
Thank you.
Any other comments?
Mr. President, I have a question, if anyone can answer this here. On a city the size of Dickinson, and with these 44 units here, and the current income-based property that is out there, is there an amount of units for this size of Dickinson? Are we approaching that limit, or, because one of the concerns here is if more people come in and want the same thing. We know we're going to get new apartments being built, but they aren't going to be income-based. And we're talking about Section 8 housing here, so how are we doing?
Well, we just had a market study completed that we needed in order to, and that I just received about 2 weeks ago. It'll be part of our application. They show that there's, a definite need in Dickinson for the 44 units that we're proposing, and probably, more units in addition to that. Also, HUD in their Denver office is doing their own market study, their people, to assess the market, because they have to approve the HAP contract, and they want to make sure that there is a need for those units before they approve that. Based on our, experience, we operate probably about 250 housing units in Dickinson, and, our occupancies are just very high. We're running, I would think, 98, 99%, occupied, which you always have a little bit of turnover. So I think there, is a demand. We're not, but, Dickinson's been through boom and bust, years in the past. Things could change. But right now, there's certainly a demand for these 44 units and probably for some additional.
But you don't know if a community the size of Dickinson should have 400 units, and currently we're at 250. I mean, that would tell me that we could possibly expect someone else to come in and ask for the same reduction here.
Yeah, I think, what's going to limit it is the amount of the other, funding sources, whether it's, the affordable housing tax credits or, the 538 loan guarantee program. All of those, they're not very big programs when, you consider this application is going to take, 25, 30% of the statewide allocation for, for this year. So, and if you're not using those programs, then basically you're building market rate apartments, and trying to build market rate apartments in Dickinson, given the rent levels, it's very difficult to, to make the numbers work on market rate housing. So, but I'm sure there will be some built because there is a need.
Would there likely be any other developer that's going to come in and use these programs to qualify for low-income housing, or is it likely that you're the only one that's going to propose to do this?
George Gockler used to do this, Valley Realty. Steve Stoner out of Fargo does some, Jim Toomey. They have never done anything in Dickinson. Stoner's originally from Williston, so he has interest in Williston and Fargo doing projects. There's a developer out of Montana that did the project that's up northwest, and that's the only project they've done here. Another developer out of Montana that did a project in Jamestown about 3 years ago, affordable housing. But so it's not a very big group of people that are doing it, and we tend to do it. I mean, the reason we did this one is basically because of Riverview Gardens. Otherwise, we didn't really have any plans to do anything in Dickinson. But we tend to work in Jamestown and in Devils Lake, Grand Forks, Fargo, Bismarck, where we have properties. But I'm not aware of anybody else that would likely come in.
Okay. All right. Mr. Jackson, I don't know how, are you still there, first of all?
I am here.
I don't know how much of this discussion you've been able to hear, but do you have any comments or questions that you'd like to make?
Getting the bulk of the discussion, and I don't think I have anything right now.
Okay, well, if you do, raise your hand, okay? All right. Okay, well, does anybody have anything else? Mr. Kessel or Mr. Stenson, can you give us just a timeline? I don't think we're prepared to make any decision or start negotiating today, but give us your timeline so we know what our constraints are here, time-wise.
Well, the application for the housing tax credits has to be submitted by Friday of this week to Bismarck. We have it pretty much ready to go, so that'll be submitted. They will probably act on that. We'll have a good idea in probably 30 to 45 days as to whether we're going to be successful. The application for the home funds is going in at the same time, and again, we think probably 30 to 45 days to hear on that. And the application for the 538 loan guarantee will be submitted next month when the NOFA comes out, and that should be a fairly quick turnaround. So I think we would hear on that in April. So I would think we would have a pretty good idea in April if the other funding sources are coming through, and if they are, and depending upon how the pilot request, we could conceivably start construction in May or June.
So I'm to assume that if any one of these three requests isn't granted, does that kind of end the project?
It would end it for this, go around. I mean, sometimes these projects get, resurrected or come in the next go around or the next application cycle, which in North Dakota is next year at this time. I think because of the energy impact and because of the loss of the existing housing due to the tornado, I think, it's pretty likely that these funding sources will be approved and very competitive applications.
But without them, the project is a no-go.
Correct,
Okay.
yes.
So you would want to hear from us probably no later than the end of March?
That would be very good timing for us. Yes.
Okay.
Mr. President?
And I think the other thing that, I mean, we've been, telling the other funding source, and everybody knows that it's all contingent upon everybody else, doing their part. So, and they're all looking at, local support too. And, there's certainly a need for the city commission has, sent a letter to the Housing Finance Agency saying that they support it. But, financial commitment through the pilot program would, strengthen those applications too and make it more likely to, that they will be approved from the other funding sources. That's always an important factor.
Okay. Mr. Colling?
I should note, too, there is a public notification requirement that must be complied with before the city commission is able to make a decision on this. If there are business competitors to this project, they are entitled to be notified via public notice that the project operator has to publish. There are 2 publications required, and they have to be, the final publication has to be within 15 to 30 days before the city commission makes a decision on the project.
So we should probably be doing that soon then, huh?
And it's the project developer that needs to issue the publication notice, so that's up to Mr. Stenson.
It's up to, so the city doesn't have to do anything, Metro Plains does.
Correct.
Okay.
But that notice requirement has to be complied with before the city commission can make a decision.
Okay. Okay. Anything else then? Okay. If there's nothing else, there's no other items on the agenda, Chair would entertain a motion then to adjourn.
So moved.
We have the motion is